Hello, everybody. This is the Ice Bath podcast, episode number 4, and I'm delighted to have with me a good friend, Steve Brett, who is a fellow training provider, and we've collaborated on a couple of things, Steve, haven't we?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's great to, thanks for the invite, Colin.
No, no, no. Thank you for being here. So, tell me a bit about E3 and your ethos. It's something I really like. I like the tagline, but I'm not going to spoil it for anybody listening.
So, I'm on a mission to rid the world of grudge training. I have spent too many hours of my life going through pointless box ticking, mandatory training,
Yeah,
compliance training. Um, I now collect ways people avoid compliance training, and you will be amazed at how inventive people are.
yeah,
From paying their kids to do their training, through to people doing multiple trainings all at the same time, so that they don't have to engage with it. And I think that's not right. A lot of the way training is delivered goes back to sort of the 1980s when compliance wasn't important.
mm,
All we needed was a tick in the box. Compliance has moved on, but a lot of the training hasn't.
yeah,
So, was it 8 years ago now? Teamed up with a BAFTA award-winning games designer. I was working in a game studio, wanted to get back into the business world. So
yeah,
talking to all my friends about, how could we use games? And loads of people said to me, compliance training, it's broken.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we spent a year looking at how people learn, what do compliance officers need to work out a way of delivering robust, auditable compliance training that worked, that helped people know what they needed to do.
yeah.
And we used to go pub testing, a technique I developed when I was at the game studio. So we go to a pub in Liverpool on a Thursday night,
Right, interesting.
target people who'd clearly left work, pay
Yeah,
them a pint,
yeah,
and get them to play our game. It was a way of getting in the moment feedback.
yeah.
And we knew we cracked it when people didn't want to hand the game back.
Really.
So roll ourselves forward now. We'll get 85, 95% of people completing their training without being chased. We
Yeah.
even get people doing their training more than once voluntarily.
I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, and generally I think people enjoy it, find it interesting. So it has impact, and that's what we're looking to do.
Yeah.
And now we've sort of moved into doing physical games as well. So we've got a
Yeah.
couple of card games on, and I'm currently working on our next card game, which at the moment is a
Right.
hand, a very a prototype pack
Yeah.
done by hand, which we're going to get a version ready for the printers to have our prototype pack in the next week or so.
That's brilliant. I mean, I know from at school, unless I was engaged, and it's a long time ago, unless I was engaged, then that was me.
Yeah,
I was daydreaming now. That might be referred to as ADHD now, but I was looking out the window and spent often in some classes spent most of the time outside. So, but I've been a sort of trainer now 20 odd years, and I'm quite lucky in that my content has to be interactive because we're talking
mm.
about online due diligence, so you're getting people to do things. So, but I do know AML, for example, can be a very dry subject. So, what would you do with anti-money laundering training to sort of spice it up and get people engaged?
So we've developed a process that is designed to suck people in. So we can take really boring content and make it so that people engage. And can we make AML suddenly,
Mm,
like watching a football? Not specifically, but it's the process around it. So we're giving
yeah,
people a challenge. We're taking them through and making it so people want to engage. They get that, they get drawn in. Uh, an interesting stat I've got is if we've got a course of about say 20 minutes, people will think it takes 10 minutes because they're engaged in what
yeah,
they're doing.
yeah.
So we're using the dark arts of mobile games. We're using games loops from mobile phone games to
Right.
get people engaged, interested, and drawn in. Um, any topic in the world can be dry or it can be engaging.
Yeah,
I used to be in a mountain rescue team, had to do helicopter training,
yeah,
and there's some online training. you would have thought rescue helicopters, the sexiest thing
Yeah,
since
yeah,
sliced bread.
yeah.
The training was dull as ditch water.
Was it?
Yeah. So you can, for me, it's not, I mean, yes, the content, if you've got something that's exciting, it makes it easier to do good training.
Mm,
But just because you've got something that is traditionally considered dry doesn't mean to say you can't make it interesting.
yeah,
But also, the thing we do is we look at what are the key bits. So we cut out all the fluff.
yeah,
Our aim is to make it as quick as we can to get people to demonstrate their capability. So, it's how do we prove that?
mm,
But it's also focusing in on, we use scenarios, use all sorts of different tools and techniques
yeah,
so that people aren't just watching a boring bit of video, click next, watch
yeah,
something. It's we're building games loops,
yeah.
and that's what we do.
But they're solving problems, I suppose, aren't they?
Yeah, I think compliance is an interesting
Mm,
area. It's a challenge. There's a lot of I was going to say ambiguity is the wrong word. There's a lot of times where it's actually a challenge to work out what you need to do because it's a very nuanced subject. I mean, obviously, sometimes, somebody comes into a bank with a bin liner of used tenors.
mm.
I mean, that's pretty obvious,
Very cut and dry, that, isn't it?
although it has happened in the past, unfortunately. Um, but then when you look at what happens day to day, it can be very grey, and it's how
Mm,
do we sensitize people to that curiosity? And is it a red flag? Do I need to be worried about it, or do I need to probe more? And
yeah,
for me, that's the interesting bit. Is there's lots of um, challenge for people to think about, and
yeah,
that's what we're trying to do: is get people to think and reflect.
yeah,
And more we're moving from um, a focus on knowledge to a focus on judgment. So how can we get people to demonstrate that they can make good judgment calls? And then that obviously leads to a better culture, and better behavior, or more consistent behavior throughout the organization.
Do you think it gives them greater confidence, that sort of training?
Actually, that's a good point. We've
Mm,
we've not surveyed that. I believe so from people I've
yeah,
spoken to. Um, I think part of it is demystifying, um, where there are rules, getting people to understand what the rule is, and that there is an area where they need to ask for help. I think
yeah,
that's where is the line? What's it? It's above my pay grade.
yeah,
What is the point where I go, hang on?
yeah,
So with SARS, it's the difference between, at what point do we form a suspicion
mhm,
versus at what point have we got a concern, and getting people to understand
yeah, yeah,
that having a concern is great, raise it, discuss it. But once you get to a point where there's a suspicion, then it gets formal, and we've got
yeah,
to
yeah,
do the right thing.
yeah. And I certainly, when I've delivered AML training in the past, I've shied away from sort of putting slides up with legislation on there because one, people don't read it, they switch off. Two, they don't want to. If you want to know the legislation from A to B, then you go and read it in a book or look it up online. Do you? It's how you interpret that and how you sort of put it into practice.
Yeah,
And
and the thing we're good at is working with. So all of our clients, I think, yeah, all of them do face-to-face training as
yeah,
well. And what our training helps them do is we take away those PowerPoint
yeah,
slides of knowledge. So a compliance officer can go into a training session with knowledge that that team knows everything that
yeah,
they need to know. And probably more importantly, knows where the weak points are so they can tailor the training. Because for me, face to face is an opportunity to engage.
yeah,
And the last thing you want to be doing is presenting. You want to be getting people,
yeah,
discussing, engaging.
yeah.
Um,
And
so
that,
yeah,
that, yeah, it's definitely a skill when you're training. Is actually, yeah, almost. I think it was explained to me many years ago as facilitating as
yeah,
opposed to presenting. You're facilitating that discussion and getting them really to solve the problems, but perhaps with a little bit of influence at times and sort of putting your own experience on the table as well. But yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, I, as you know, look at regularly at fines, interventions, etc. And I still can't cut my head around some of these big organisations that get whacked with huge fines that could be mitigated massively by effective training. And is that your view? Is training failing generally, or
I think it depends on the firm. I see a lot of firms that really want to do good, robust training
yeah,
because they see that it helps build the culture, but more importantly, builds capability.
yeah,
There are still firms out there, unfortunately, who I think see training as a box ticking exercise.
yeah,
I think they're becoming fewer, but yeah, there are still firms where I think they're not setting a high enough ambition on what training is. It becomes a bit box ticking, and that is a risk for those firms.
yeah,
More and more, I think people are realizing that training really matters. I think sometimes the challenge is how do we deliver effective training. Speaking to somebody a few weeks ago who said, "Oh, we're going to have to change the whole way we do our training because the online training that's available isn't fit for purpose. You can't customize it, you can't do this, you can't do that. We're getting very low engagement rate." And I just
yeah,
said, "Speak to us."
yeah,
And when I said what we did, they were like, "What? We can do it." So, you know, hopefully we'll go live with them. But they got to the point where they were considering, and it's quite a large firm, doing
mm,
all their training face to face, which would be very expensive
yeah,
and perversely not as effective as a mixture of good online training and good facilitated face to face training,
yeah,
or synchronous training. I've started thinking about asynchronous versus
yeah,
synchronous
yeah,
because I was speaking to somebody the other day and they were talking about, oh, we do online training. And what they meant was we run Teams calls. And that
yeah.
to me is
Not the
effectively
same, is
face to face. Yeah.
it? Yeah, yeah.
So,
And I think I personally suffer with this preference for certain companies to have this style of training for what I do. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't because, if I'm getting somebody to do something online or on a computer, I need to be over their shoulder sometimes, and you can't do that. And you can't correct things. So I think it's really about scoping out the need. I think we already touched on that. Yeah.
yeah, I think you need a mixture. And the worst thing you can do is do inappropriate training for the circumstance. So, I'd argue just presenting facts in a face to face
Hmm.
meeting, workshop is a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Um, because you've got that opportunity to engage. The problem with online is you've got to decide what the outcomes are.
Hmm.
It's very effective, it's very good at scale, but if you've got something that's very nuanced and you want to really make sure people understand,
Yeah.
you probably need that real-time interaction. So
Yeah.
it's working out what goes in which box and using the appropriate tools. And I think, yeah, you can use like a Teams call training,
Yeah.
but you've just got to be very clear on what it can do and what it can't do.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
you say, um, if you've got a big group, yeah, you're not going to be able to give
No.
individual feedback.
No.
And I think face to face, actually getting people in a room and sharing, there's a social element to it.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
One of the things, we built our first card game for a couple of compliance people specifically because they wanted to build relationships with the front line.
Hmm.
And they said to me, look, we're struggling, we're doing training, but I'm doing PowerPoint presentations. I know that people are bored with it. I need to do something different. I don't want to be seen as the fun sponge. So yeah, we initially built a risk game.
Yeah.
We ran the first few, and to have people in an office guffawing about risk, was quite good to see.
Yeah.
And had one of the senior directors come up to me afterwards, and he said, I came to this grudgingly, because I didn't think risk was anything to do with us, with my team.
Yeah.
I've come away from this realizing actually we have a lot to offer, a lot to influence. And that was a great success because I know the compliance officer had been really struggling with that particular department.
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, people don't come to work to do a bad job.
No.
People come to work to get stuff done, to, the social element, the challenge,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But people don't come to do a bad job.
No.
Often it's just they're not aware of the impact of what
No.
they're doing. And
Yeah.
that's where
Because
training can really help.
yeah, and I think bringing separate departments together really helps because understanding each other's sort of problems, solutions. And you mentioned that was a senior manager, didn't you, that came on?
Yeah, that was actually a director,
Was it? Right.
head of one of the bit. I won't say
Yeah. No.
the department because it's
Yeah.
some people might say it's typical of
Yeah.
that department, but
Yeah.
yeah,
But I've certainly the best courses I've had is where you've got somebody senior or a supervisor in the same space.
yeah,
Because some might say that that's a bit, limited. They're not, don't feel confident to talk. Well, if that's going on, there's something wrong with the culture. So, I find better. There's a company I've done, or an organisation actually I've done regular training with. The guy who's in charge of it always makes a point of being in the training, and
yeah, yeah,
yeah, he's
yeah,
respected for that, and the actual interaction's really good, and it's reflective of him actually because he's a very good leader.
yeah.
So yeah,
I think that's one of the culture pieces, isn't it? Is that
Mm.
if senior people aren't engaging with compliance,
Yeah, yeah,
it sends the wrong signal.
yeah,
And that's the training. I remember years ago working in a firm, and we had to do some training, and one of the executive directors came in, and he was clearly, I'm here because I've been told by the GC I've got to be here.
yeah,
And he was clearly not engaged, clearly a bit hacked off.
yeah.
And he just sat at the back doing his emails. Now, the message that sent to everybody else in the room
That's bad.
was, wasn't great. I know he had a hard time with the GC for a while, and I can't
Mm.
remember what
Mm.
happened. But for me, those small things, if you've got, a senior person coming and going, this matters to me, and I'm going to pay attention
Yeah,
and ask good questions. It
yeah,
it does set the tone. What is it?
definitely.
Tone set from the top.
Yeah,
The FCA
exactly.
make a big thing about it.
Yeah, lead by example and all that.
Yeah,
No, that's really good. I mean, that as you said earlier on about time flying by, we've
yeah.
20 minutes in. That's really, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. So, if anybody listening to this podcast wants to contact you, what's the best way of doing it?
So then drop me an email, steve at e3ct.com. So that's echo number three, charlietango.com. Yeah, more than happy. If anyone wants to see a better way of doing their compliance training, if you're interested in the physical card games.
Yeah,
The other one is if they've got a challenge that they go,
yeah,
I just can't get people and get, we don't build courses ourselves anymore. We build all of our courses collaboratively with customers.
yeah, yeah,
So the one got a couple of courses that we've released fairly recently. Both have come from customers saying we want to do more on this. So the failure to prevent, we've got a course on that,
yeah,
and for lawyers, client accounts.
yeah.
And yeah, I enjoy the challenge where somebody says,
No,
"This is boring. We can't get people to engage." We just like, we'll show you where you can. So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. No, it's been a really good conversation. I'm
yeah,
sure
no,
people will benefit from, and contact you and have a conversation. And if they've
yeah.
got to get their training to a point where it's much more engaging and they get something from it, rather than sort of dry slides and all that sort of stuff. So,
Yeah.
no, thanks
Thanks
for
for the
coming
time.
on, Steve.
Yeah. Can I just say one last thing? Oh, if
Hmm.
there's anyone from a compliance team listening, if they're, I know you've been to a couple of our sessions, Colin,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
with the Compliance Collective,
yes,
we run, so for lawyers, weekly sessions, for financial services firms, bi-weekly sessions. It's a free chance for compliance people to get together and have a chat. So if
yeah,
anyone's interested in coming along,
yeah,
we cover all sorts of topics.
yeah,
It's great for people to join.
yeah.
It's a really friendly group. So
It is very much so. I can
yeah,
speak from that because I presented and everybody was very
yeah,
engaging and there was a thirst for knowledge there, and it was a thoroughly enjoyable sort of webinar. We've done two now.
yeah,
Yeah,
and thanks for
yeah.
coming along. It was great. Yeah.
No,
So
no, I really
thanks,
enjoyed it.
thanks for the invite, Colin.
No, no, thank you for coming on. I'm sure people are going to really enjoy this one.